Welcome everyone to the Expert Media Show. This is your host, Tony Laddig, and welcome to episode number 89. Next week is number 90. Holy cow. And we should like party or something, but I don't know. We probably won't. This week we're going to go through a success checklist, and I was just kind of meditating on what to present tonight, and this came through pretty loud and clear. Initially, I was planning on going through this whole thing in one webinar, and as I listed it out and was preparing the notes and everything for it, what I realized was that it would really not do you any great benefit for me to try to jam all of this into one webinar. Just because I think you're going to enjoy this, and it's got some good stuff in it. So I think what I'm going to do is, for the next, at least this week and next week, focus on this. We're going to kind of do a theme kind of deal. And I'll see how next week comes together when we get there. And so it could even roll into a part 3. I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see how it all comes together, because I don't want to rush through it, because I think you're going to find that it's some pretty helpful, decent training. And what really inspired me to take a look at this before we really dive in is that different ones that I've talked to and interacted with, and customer support emails that I have received, and even some of the input and comments on the survey that I've been running, I realize that a lot of people are feeling stuck. And as a result of feeling stuck, they're not achieving success. They're not moving forward in their business and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, you know what would make sense is to just kind of lay things out. And the more I work through those notes, the more I realized, holy cow, there's a lot of places where people can get stuck. So I'm not saying that this is going to be the be-all, end-all, but it's definitely going to be training that I think you'll find helpful and that you can definitely use as a checklist. I tried to create at least the actual checklist part of it as a checklist that you can follow. So anyway, let's dive in. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how it all starts with the right foundation, and you'll understand and see why it's so important here in just a moment. I'm also going to share the real key to succeeding with selling your products and services, and it may not be what you think. And we're going to start off with the 7 stages of product development and what you should be doing in each one. And so tonight we're going to just cover the first 2 stages. And like I said, I could have, wrapped them all into one, but it just would have been too much. We'd have been here for hours. And that's really not the purpose of this show. So I think it's going to be at least a 2-part series, if not a 3-part series. And of course, much more. So, before we begin, I have a question to ask, and that is, do I have your permission to be real and tell it like it is? And so you can say yes or no. I mean, if you want, I can sugarcoat it and blow smoke up your skirt and all that kind of stuff and share a bunch of feel-good, happy-go-lucky stuff, or I can tell you why you're really not having success. I mean, it's up to you. So, okay, so a lot of yeses. That's good. Perfect. Excellent. All right, good. So, building the right foundation is really key to any business. And what I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to share some examples from my own life and from people that I've interacted with and all of that. And there's some things that I've noticed. I've noticed them with myself. I've noticed them with other people. And it really comes down to where most people fail in some form or another. Now, understand that I'm going to be talking in somewhat generic terms, so some parts may apply to you and other parts may not. So the parts that hit you where it hurts, take those to heart. The parts that you go, oh, that ain't me at all, well then just leave it. Like back in the days when I was in Bible college, the leader of the college said, eat the hay and leave the sticks. And that's what you can do with tonight. The stuff that seems like quote unquote food for you, go ahead and eat that, and the rest of it just leave alone. But what I really want you to promise me is that if something strikes you as, ooh, I do that, make a note of that, because it's the only way you're really going to move forward. So chances are that the success of your first or next product has already been determined, even if you haven't created it yet. And I want you to think about that. Whether you have a product created or not. And quite frankly, this will even go out to business ventures, affiliate marketing, fill in the blank. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. Any kind of work, even your 9-to-5 job or whatever you have, this statement also applies to that. And that is that your success or failure in your products, in your services, in your job, in business ventures, all of that has likely already been determined, even if you haven't created it yet or gotten that job yet. And there's a very specific reason why, and it's directly tied to why you are or are not having success doing what you're doing. And I've talked about this before. We're going to talk about it again. And that is that your beliefs and mindset around work, money, success, failure, self-worth, etc., and what's possible for you sets the foundation for everything. In other words, what you believe about each of these things, about work, money, success, what your work ethic is, how you view things, really sets in place the foundation for everything. And, we just wrapped up selling PS Instant Expert, so those of you who have always wanted to learn Photoshop, and you have those videos now, and you can go through and you can learn how to use Photoshop and all that, that's great. Those are great, important strategies to have. But at the end of the day, that knowledge will not make you a success. Okay? It's what you believe about your ability to create success that ultimately makes the difference. And I'll give you a great example. I just recently had a conversation with a member of my family, and we were talking about success and business and all of that. And we were talking about pricing strategies. She has an actual store, and we were talking about how to price goods and all of those kinds of things. And there were some statements that were made, and I found them extremely interesting. And one of the statements was, well, whenever I saw the prices that that were listed, I thought that they were extremely low. And I said so. I believe my comment was, "Are you crazy? Why is this stuff priced so low?" And it's like, well, I know what I paid for it. I'm like, that's a good thing. And so why are you charging so little? Well, industry standard is that you should double the price on wholesale. And I'm like, says who? Industry standard is that you want to make a profit. And it's like, well, yeah, but I don't want people to think I'm greedy. And I said, are you greedy? No. Then why would people think that? Well, I don't want to rip people off. Are you ripping people off? No. Then why would you think that? And we just kind of went back and forth, and there was these constant things coming out about money and success and just on and on and on. I'm like, just really flipping the mirror around, saying, take a look and listen to what you're saying. Listen to what you're doing, And I said, and pardon me for saying it this way, but it is what it is. I said, look, I'm selling information products online. They aren't even physical products. People are buying electrons. And they're, my price points are at different places, $47, $97, $27, whatever. And I said, I'm selling my skills, my knowledge, right? And I said, you're selling physical products and you're afraid to mark it up. Do you want to make your money back that you've invested, or don't you? Well, yeah, I do. I just don't want to, want people to think that I'm greedy, And I'm like, wow, okay, well, I know that you're not greedy, so I don't think you have anything to worry about. And what I realized from that conversation, and there were other conversations that were similar around that, is that we have these limiting beliefs. And ultimately, it comes down to how we view our work, our money, our success, our failure, like I have here in the list, because that's what sets the foundation. And it's important to recognize what your own personal objections and excuses are, because that's the first step toward success. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Why did I just say that? Why did I think that? Well, and I have a whole list of them. We're going to look at them here in a minute. I remember, I think I shared this story before, but I remember I was coaching a guy who was in one of my one-on-one coaching programs several years ago. I was working with him to set up a publishing company, and he was really struggling. And he made a statement similar to what my sister had made, and it's like, well, I don't want people to think I'm taking advantage of them or something to that effect. And I stopped him right in his tracks, and I said, whoa, why did you just say that? And he said, what did I say? And I repeated it back to him, and he goes, I didn't even realize that I said that. And I said, yeah, but you did. And I said, where's that coming from? Are you taking advantage of people? Well, no, of course not. Well, then why did you say that? And he didn't even realize it. It was completely invisible to him that he had said that. And he took note. I mean, he really took note. He went, I said, look, go home, pray, meditate, do whatever you need to do. Talk to your wife. She knows you better than you know yourself. And find out where that's coming from. And then change it. Okay? And he did that. And what happened is nothing short of amazing. I mean, this guy has built a publishing company that is unbelievable. I mean, they're shooting videos, movies. They're doing all kinds of books, nonfiction, fiction, children's books, all of that in multiple countries around the world. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he's done in a couple years' time. I mean, the dude's so freaking busy now, I can't even have lunch with him hardly, because he's like in South Africa or wherever all the time. But that was the turning point for him. He caught, or rather I pointed it out to him, but he did something about it and he shifted it. And so don't be afraid to question why you see things or think about things a certain way. And there's any number of reasons. And I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're bad for those kinds of thoughts. We all have them, believe me. I mean, Lord knows I've shared enough of my own experiences around this. But the secret here is to not stay in that space, because here's the thing. If you keep trying stuff and failing and nothing ever works out, and you always seem to never quite get to second base or whatever the case may be, there's a reason. It isn't that you suck or that you're stupid, but there's a reason. And the reason, it could simply just be programming or belief or whatever. So question everything. I always tell people that. Question everything. If you think things a certain way, why do you think them? It could come from, that's how your parents were, your grandparents or whatever. It could be your culture. It could be church. We're programmed certain ways to believe certain things in church. I mean, that's some of what plays into my sister's programming, is stuff that she grew up believing from church. And I'm not against church, believe me. I went to the same church she did, but we grew up quite a bit different from those kinds of beliefs about money and stuff. But, don't be afraid to question why. And the next part is what and who do you surround yourself with? Is the input that you're getting constantly negative and down-putting and all of that kind of stuff? People telling you that you're stupid and you're never going to succeed, or you watching news all the time and getting stressed out and and bothered, and all of that, looking at what politics is doing and how the gas prices are raising, and the country's going to hell in a handbasket, and yet another shooting, and all this kind of stuff. Why subject yourself to all of that, in the name of being informed? I mean, really? I believe in being informed, but I also believe that I have quality control in what's coming into my head and into my spirit and into my beliefs, because it affects you. And I've shared before, one of the big revelations that I got was from T. Harv Eker's book, Millionaire Mindset, way back when, 7-8 years ago, and his introduction, you're the sum total of your 5 closest friends. And I made the statement out loud then that I needed new friends. But here's the thing. I got new friends. It's like I didn't keep hanging out with my friends that I had. I mean, I still talk to them on occasion and all of that kind of stuff. But I started surrounding myself and making acquaintances with people who were where I wanted to be. And I still practice that today. I mean, a lot of the people that I try to surround myself with today, crap, man. I mean, these guys are doing $100,000 a day and, crazy, ridiculous amounts of money that they're making online. I don't know how they do what they do. I mean, mentally, I know their strategy, but my mindset isn't there yet, because obviously I'm not making $100,000 a day, or, if my mindset was there, I would be. But how am I going to get there? How are you going to get to a place of wanting to make $30,000 a month, or $10,000 a month, or $5,000 a month if you're surrounded by people who aren't? If the primary people that are giving input into your life are making, $20 an hour, and they're the ones that are telling you, oh, well, you should do this in your business, or maybe you should consider that. How are you going to ever get to a place that's beyond $20 an hour? You're not. You need to follow people who are, and surround yourself with people who are, making 5, 10, 20, 50 times what you're making. And it, just by being around folks like that, shifts your mindset. It gives you hope and possibilities, and it opens up your dreams to the point where you think, you know what, maybe I can do this. Maybe I do have something to share. Maybe I do have something to say. It really shifts you in some pretty cool ways. And I know that that's been my experience. I mean, God, I remember whenever I cracked the $100 a day mark, I thought that was like an impossible dream, to make $100 a day. And I mean, it's been years ago now, but I remember when I did it like 5 days in a row, I was practically jumping up and down in tears, because I figured something out, and that something that I figured out resulted in me making $100 a day. I mean, if I were making $100 a day now, I would be in panic, but lifestyle expands to where you are. But anyways, I mean, that was a huge thing for me, to get to that point. And I recognized that for me to get further than that, something had to change, and part of it had to do with who I was associating with and all of that. The big challenge here is in recognizing that self-deception will keep you stuck. It's important to get honest with yourself and face the reality of why success seems elusive. I mean, if success is elusive to you and you can't figure it out, it's time to get honest and real. And all that stuff that you said, nah, it can't be that. It's that. Okay, I'm just telling you right now, whatever that is. Because self-deception is going to keep you stuck. You can believe what you want to believe about yourself, and you can blame other people and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're still stuck. You're still not going to have success. And if you move into the blame game, it's like, well, it's because of this or because of that. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, and you may not like it. But ultimately, I mean, I got to where I am today, and I'm certainly not where I plan to be, tomorrow or 6 months from now. But I got to where I am today not because I had all of these uber design skills and Photoshop knowledge and all that kind of stuff and professional photographer and all of that. Shit, I was that 10 years ago. You know, and 10 years ago, I made $11,000 for the whole freaking year. Same knowledge. Okay? So it isn't my skill. Something is different about me today than what it was 10 years ago. That's why I have the success that I have. It's not my skill set. I mean, yeah, I have those skills and, IQ and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. I had no success before. I mean, I had some success. I wasn't like, totally bombed out, but I mean, I was in foreclosure and everything else, So, I get it. I get what it's like to be there. And I get what it's like to like pound your head against the wall going, what the hell's going on here? Because it seems like, I mean, that year, whenever, everything, the bottom fell out, I went and applied for 13 different jobs that I was uniquely qualified for. I didn't even get a call back. And my father-in-law at the time is like screaming in my ear going, you need to provide for your family and blah, blah, blah. And the only thing that I had going for me was that I believed that I could do it. I didn't know what it was, mind you, but I just believed that, I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to work for the man. I've been working on my own since 2000. And so I just couldn't go back. I didn't know what the answer was, but I couldn't go back. And that put me on this journey of a lot of soul searching and going, okay, obviously what I'm doing isn't working, so something needs to change. And ultimately the revelation was that what needed to change was me. It wasn't my wife's fault. It wasn't my family's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was me. And as I've changed, so has my business. Every single step of the way. Now, here's the thing. You have to own your story. And we all have one. And the beautiful thing about it is that if you don't like your story, and your story is what your life is like right now, such as it is. If you don't like it, change it. I know that sounds easier than it is. But quite frankly, it is easier than you think it is. It's literally making up your mind. It's like saying, I can't take it anymore and I'm going to do something about it, and because it really is like that. I say all the time, I don't know where all of you are from a spirituality perspective, and I'm not going to make this a spiritual kind of thing, although it sort of kind of is to a certain extent. But, there's this Bible verse, this scripture that says that God's mercy is new every morning. And that's an extreme paraphrase for me. But I've always taken that literally, I mean, whether you believe in God or the universe or, source energy or whatever, I have no problem with any of those. But at the end of the day, however you view divinity, it sits outside of time. Okay, so God or the universe is not affected by time. We're the ones rotating around the sun, so we're experiencing the 24-hour day. But I choose to think of it from the perspective that, in my experience here on this planet, going around the sun, there is a night and a day, and tomorrow morning is going to be a new morning. And so I choose to believe that because it's a new day, I have new choices. And if I didn't like how my day went today, I can make different choices tomorrow to change it. And I kind of like that, because the truth is that we're all creators and we all have the power within us to change our story if you don't like it. And I know we're talking about success checklist here. You don't get any of this right, the rest of it doesn't matter, quite frankly. So that's why I'm spending time to really focus on this now. All right, so let me ask you a question. Do you say or think one or more of the following? Okay. I don't know where to begin. You know, I've been listening to Tony teach for 2 years and I still don't know where to begin. Or I feel overwhelmed. There's so much to do. There's so many different directions that I could go. I just feel overwhelmed. I don't know where to begin. You can use these in tandem. It works really well. I don't have the skills. I just bought Tony's Photoshop course, but I still don't have the skills. And then I start to feel overwhelmed, and then I don't know where to begin. See how it all works? Who on earth would even buy my product? I mean, if I made a product, who would buy it anyway? Or, I don't have the money. I mean, God, you'd be surprised how many people were complaining about, you know, us saying that you'd have to get Photoshop for $10 a month. And maybe some of that was you, and I apologize in advance, but it's freaking 33 cents a day. I mean, come on. You know, I had dinner at Red Robin last night. It cost like 12 bucks or 13 bucks or something. That one meal in the entire month of June cost me more than what Photoshop cost. Will that food make me money? No. Will Photoshop make me money? Yes. So it's a matter of perspective. Whether you know, go couch diving, you know, if you don't have 33 cents. That's all I'm going to say about it. Some of you may be offended by that. I'm sorry. But it really, I mean, we're talking priorities here. Do you want to succeed or don't you? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If you want to succeed bad enough, you'll find the 33 cents. Go sell a couple damn cans of soda or something, you know, and get the money. Whatever it takes, right? It's whatever it takes. I don't have the time. None of us have the time. Believe me, you know. Go to bed 1 hour later. You'll have an extra hour a day. I'm a nobody. We're all nobodies. Okay? So you're in good company. You know, you're in a company of nobodies. I'm a nobody. But I don't let that stop me. I mean, seriously, think about this. All of you are here tonight, and I really am grateful for that, and I'm really grateful for everyone who invested in the training that we just released and all of that. But I mean, in the grand scheme of like 7 billion people, who am I? You know, I'm me. I'm Tony, you know, the real Tony. Or as Maya calls me, I'm Super Pappy. But, you know, I mean, she's 2. What do you think she's going to think? But really, in the grand scheme of things, we're all just trying to figure this stuff out. So don't use that as an excuse. Or you could think it's already been done, you know. Of course it's already been done. If it hasn't already been done, you shouldn't be doing it. You know, if you found a unique thing that no one else has done before and it's going to make you a lot of money, you have another thing coming. If no one else has done it before, there's a reason why. And it isn't because they were just, you know, overlooking something that's awesome. You want it to already be done. You know, I mean, there's Photoshop courses out there that people pay $1,600 for or $500 for or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't, but, you know, but still, I mean, they're out there. So, and there's other even internet marketers that have developed courses teaching Photoshop. You know, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Maybe next week. I'm not quite sure where that is in the grand scheme of things. But who cares? You know, they're not me. They don't have my perspective, my point of view. They don't have your perspective, your point of view. I don't know what to create. Okay. That's another one that you might think. Or, I tried that and it didn't work. Or, what if no one buys? You know, I mean, you would think, well, that's a valid question. Okay. I already talked about some of these. I don't want to rip people off. And I find this extremely interesting, statements like this. Well, I don't want to take advantage of people. I don't want to rip people off. You know, I don't want people to think that I'm something I'm not. I don't want people to think I'm a fraud. You know, are you any of those things? Chances are likely that you're not. And if you were those things, you wouldn't be saying that. If you really wanted to rip people off, you wouldn't be saying, I don't want to rip people off. You'd just be doing it already. You see what I'm saying? So there's something in the programming that causes people to say that. And it isn't that you really believe that you're going to rip people off. It actually goes down to self-worth. You don't think that what you have to offer is worth people paying, and that's why you don't want to rip people off. I don't want to be greedy. What if I fail? That could be like the best thing ever happened to you. We all fail. It's what you do after you fail that makes the difference. I often play this little game, and I do it quite a bit actually. And the game is called Worst Case Scenario. And actually, I think there might be a book out about this now. I don't know. But I've never read it. But I approach everything from what's the worst that could happen? You know, if I launch this course, what's the worst that could happen? If I don't take action, what's the worst that could happen? And what I've found in every time, the answer is never as bad as I make it out to be, because we have elaborate imaginations that can concoct and come up with some pretty epic fails. Of course, it's all imaginary, and it doesn't really exist. Like everything that we worry and stress about, it isn't real. You know, we're making it real, but it isn't real. You're just what if... Oh my God, what if so-and-so reads this, or blah, 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 blah. We concoct these incredible stories in our head of how people are going to act and react and all this kind of stuff, and none of it's based on reality. Okay? Well, my family thinks that this is a stupid idea. So what? You know? My mom and dad didn't think that I could make it as an artist. And I showed them... You know, my friends think I'm crazy. Well, you know, here's the thing about that. They think you're crazy regardless, you know, and that may be a good thing or a bad thing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because here's the thing. Every one of those that I just listed, and even all the ones that I didn't include, because we could have went on and on for a long time, they're excuses. You know, and we use them to justify our story so that we feel comfortable and we don't rock the boat. And, you know, we go through these anxiety attacks and, oh my God, what if this happens? And, you know, all of that. So we need these excuses to justify our story so we stay out of panic mode. And you have to understand that that's what's going on and be real about it and accept it, and then find out why those are coming up. Because ultimately, the question is, do you want to remain a victim to your excuses, or do you want to succeed? You know, that's really what it is. I just went through some leadership training not too long ago, and they talk about this thing called the trickster's triangle, where we all tend to live at times. And it's a triangle because we're either a victim or a hero or a villain. And I tend to try to be, in the past anyways, I was really good at either being a victim or a hero. I wasn't always a villain, although we tend to make other people the bad guy, you know, so it's the same difference. But one of the cycles that I've talked about in the past in my own life and in my own business growth was this hero thing. I needed to feel like the hero. And so I would literally self-sabotage and create these scenarios in my business where it was all going to hell in a handbasket. Every month, magically, something would happen that it's going down this time. And I would stress about it. I would worry about it. Oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? Blah, blah, blah. And then somehow magically, Tony would save the day. Dun, da, da. The hero is here, and somehow the bills got paid every single month. And this went on for months and months and months, and I couldn't see it. And finally one day I was meditating and I saw it, that I needed to feel like a hero because it gave me value. If I saved the day, then I had value. Okay? And so I was creating this vicious cycle of craziness. And finally, I recognized, you know what, I don't need to do that anymore. And I stopped. And the minute I stopped, everything was good again. But we make these choices, you know, we make these decisions. I remember at one point, back when it was really kind of challenging, our family was on food stamps. And I was just starting to awaken to some of these things. We're talking, gosh, 8 or 9 years ago. And I struggled with food stamps, but I knew that we needed the money or the food, because I didn't have enough money coming in, which challenged me as well. And then finally one day I realized, you know what? We're never going to get free. We're never going to move forward in success the way I want to move forward in success if we keep holding on to these food stamps. And so I went to my wife. I was married at the time, and I went to her and I said, I think we need to stop the food stamps. And she's like, because we were getting like $400 a month or something. And she's like, what do you plan on doing for food? You know, do you not want to eat or what? And I said, you know, I have to believe that if we take that step of faith, it's all going to work out. And thankfully, she trusted me enough to go with it, although I think she had some major concerns. But I'll never forget going to the our caseworker. Really nice guy, little league coach and all that kind of stuff. And his name, Ken, I think was his name. And so I went in, I called him up and asked him if I could meet with him. And he's like, yeah, sure, what's going on? Everything happening okay and all that? And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I want to stop the food stamps. And he said, you want to do what? And I said, you know, I have to believe that I'm not going to get to where I want to be from a success perspective unless I trust enough that everything is going to be okay without these food stamps. And he said, you know, I've been doing this for a long time and nobody has ever done what you're doing before, like never. And I said, well, good. I'm glad I'm the first. And so he's like, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing. You know, I just wish you guys the best of luck and I hope everything turns out okay. And don't you know that we never noticed any kind of difference at all. The money just naturally increased to meet our expenses and needs and everything. I mean, it was just awesome. There was never, you know, oh my God, what are we going to do? That never happened. I mean, but the fear felt real. And then we just felt it and moved through it anyway. And it worked out okay. And so understand that these thoughts and conclusions come from somewhere. Okay. And so it's important to find out where and why, and then make new choices. And you'll see and experience different results. And you probably all heard, you know, some say it's from Einstein, others don't. Who knows? Who cares? That you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And that's really true. And I've always looked at it a little bit different. I've shared this before, that you can think you're making all the changes you want, but if you keep getting the same result, then you're not changing. You know, you could say, yeah, but I'm doing this and I'm doing this, but I keep getting the same result. Well, then guess what? Somewhere down the road, you're doing the same thing. Okay, so if you want a different result, you have to do something different. And what I found from my own personal experience, I obviously can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself, and I'd venture to guess that this is probably true for you as well, is that at the end of the day, whenever we stop our objections and we stop our stress and we stop our worry and we stop our excuses and we stop all that other stuff, which we're afraid to do, but whenever we do that and get real, we know what's holding us back. We know. You know what's holding you back, ultimately. And ultimately, if you want to experience success and you want to get any benefit out of this checklist that I'm going to be sharing, you got to fix that, you know, whatever that is, or you're not going to get there. It's just that simple. And, you know, if you have, yeah, but Tony, you don't know my situation, you know, I don't need to know your situation. I'm just telling you how it is. You know, I asked if it was okay and you said yes. So, you know, I'm just telling you how it is. Remember what I said about self-deception. It's subtle, man. You know, it's really subtle. I mean, listen, just a month ago, I figured out that I was so self-deceived that I was living inside a version of myself that was like 95% me, but it was like just this subtle spin just to protect me, protect like the real Tony. And so, you know, I had this whole story spun about who I was and all of that, and it's all basically true except for just a tiny little bit, and it was enough to protect this little kid inside that just wanted to get out and freaking have fun. You know? And I couldn't see it. And I felt these walls, and the walls were closing in, and I was bumping up into them, and I'm like, what the heck is going on with these walls? I mean, I could feel that. I really felt constrained. This is, you know, going back, starting 2 months ago. And I was really feeling constrained, and I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I could almost feel it physically, just boom, boom. What is going on? You know, and these walls. And finally, I had this epiphany. I was meditating, and it was like, what's up with these walls? And the response came back to me, what walls? And in that moment, I realized that the walls that I were running into, I constructed. I put them there. And the moment I realized that they weren't real, they were gone. And something shifted that just moved me forward in a new direction in freedom that I've never really experienced before. And it was just completely subtle. And that's what being honest with yourself. And it took somebody really hitting me right between the eyes. I mean, calling me in my shit, pardon my French. But I mean, they did. They called me on it big time. And to the point where other people who were there in the moment like gasped. Like, oh my God, I'm glad she didn't do that to me, you know, that kind of thing. But I embraced it. I wanted change, you know, and I didn't know what was going on. And so it made a huge difference in who I am. And what's interesting is, of course, the very next step that I did in business, which was this product launch that we just concluded, is the biggest thing I've ever done. I mean, ever. And it was just, it was the kind of experience that I want all of you guys to have, because, you know, I want to see all of you succeed. I mean, I really do. That's why I do what I do. And, you know, I mean, yeah, the money from the sales is nice and all of that. I mean, you know, I'd be an idiot to say otherwise. But at the end of the day, you know, whenever I was making those videos, it wasn't just like a throwaway thing that I could do to put it out there. My name is attached. I mean, this is the first time I've created a product with private label rights, for crying out loud. It's going everywhere. And I knew that. And I struggled with that, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, I mean, I just wanted that to be something, you know, important. And it's obviously there's more to learn in Photoshop. I mean, it's not a be-all, end-all, for crying out loud. It would be like a, you know, a non-stop 100-hour training or something, probably. And I'm not quite ready to do that. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. So I want to talk about, let's just spin this around. Okay, so let's say that we've identified some things, and we're working through some things, and we're taking some steps in the right direction. And I really believe that the very first step that we need to make, it comes to planning and execution. And you want to be careful in that, okay? We're going to get into step one here in just a moment, but leading up to that, it really comes down to ideas. And I believe in inspired ideas and trusting my gut, following my gut. I mean, that's how I live. That's how I do my business. Even today's presentation, you know, I had a tablet laying on the counter in my kitchen, and I just walked back and forth around my house, just kind of listening. And when an idea had come to me, I wrote it down. You know, I've talked about how I've done that in the past, and I still do that today. I've done it for years. and it works for me. And so I fully believe in inspired ideas. However, good ideas are a dime a dozen. I mean, that's the reality of it. You all probably have good ideas. You may even have brilliant ideas. But a brilliant idea does not a successful person make. There's a lot of people who have brilliant ideas and they're broke. You know, and I've often said, only because I've been here myself, you know, where you have an idea but you don't take action on it, and then somebody else does, and you turn to whoever and say, see, I told you that was a good idea. Except they're the ones making the money, not you. So to me, that's kind of sad, right? So the good ideas are a dime a dozen. I mean, the U.S. Copyright Office won't even copyright an idea. You can't even copyright an idea. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever, right? It's how you qualify those ideas and execute them that matters the most. You know, you all probably have great ideas, but if you don't qualify those ideas, meaning figure out, should I do this or shouldn't I? You know, or are you going to let other people talk you out of it? Or, even more subtle, are you going to let people talk you into something? Lord knows I've been there. Talk you into something, and you feel, I don't know if I want to do that or not. But they, you know, they hype you up, and then you're starting to feel it. And it's like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I should pay attention to them. After all, they know better than I do. You know, how many of you said that one? Well, they know better than I do, so I think I should maybe go along with it and give it a try. I mean, after all, how am I going to know if I don't really give it a try? And then you fall flat in your face and you go, see, I knew that I shouldn't have been doing that, right? I mean, we've all been there. And so it's important to get it right up front, to qualify it, follow your gut, but execute, okay? And so to this extent, you know, all of that to lead up to this. To that extent, I've identified 7 stages of product development that must be followed to increase your chances of success. There may be others, and I don't really care. You know, these are the 7 that came to me, okay? And that's what we're going to be covering tonight and into next week, and we'll see how next week goes if we get through the balance of them. But I'm only going to share 2 tonight because I wanted to spend, and these are 2 good ones for you to cook on for a week, because I wanted to spend some time talking about this belief system mindset thing again, because it's important, and because I'm not kidding. You know, if you don't get the first part that we just spent the last 45 minutes talking about, then you might as well just hop off the webinar now, because it ain't going to make a difference. You'll just have more great information to overwhelm you and still not know what to do. But more importantly, figure out why you feel overwhelmed. You know, and you know what? I give you full permission to unplug from significant other, kids, whatever the case may be, after the webinar is over. Go to a quiet place. Don't turn on the damn radio or whatever else to drown out your thoughts because you're trying to escape them. Get quiet. Go outside. Enjoy nature, unless it's like hailing, like Cindy said earlier. That's not good. Although the hail might knock some sense into you. Who knows? But get quiet and listen and ask questions. Ask them out loud. You might be surprised what comes to you. You know, why do I keep doing this over and over and over again? Why does it feel like I'm stuck? You know, why do I feel so overwhelmed every time I try to take the next step forward? Ask those questions out loud, you know, and then listen and see what comes to you. It may be a real subtle answer, you know, but just listen. So here's the 7 stages that I've identified that I feel are important to product development success. The first one is, I'm going to give you all 7, and we're going to look at the first 2. So the first one is product ideas and brainstorming. The second is market research. Number 3 is product creation. Kind of got to create it, right? Tools and services, marketing and promotion, product delivery, and follow-up. And what you're going to find as we go through these 7 is that a lot of them are interchangeable. I put them in an order that basically makes sense, but quite frankly, they can be interchangeable. And so sometimes, you may start marketing promotion before you even create the product. I mean, I do that a lot actually. But I had to have some kind of an order. So this is the one that we went with. So let's talk about stage one. And that's product ideas and brainstorming. So you want to organize your ideas. Chances are that you have at least one, probably 20, many of you 100 or 1,000. And I don't say that disparagingly, but it's true. I know some of you who are on here have a lot of ideas. But you need to organize them, and there's a number of ways that you can organize them. One is relevance to your market right now. And this is probably one of the more important ways to organize your ideas, is relevance to your market right now. Because things are changing so rapidly that it doesn't matter if it was a good idea 2 years ago. The time for it may have passed. So grieve your loss, bury it, put a couple flowers on it, and move on. Okay? Or time to market or ability to execute. So what this means is, how long will it take you to actually get this idea to market? Is it one of those things that you can turn around in a weekend? Is it going to take you 6 months? Is it going to take you a year? How long is it going to take you to execute it? Okay? Because if you need something to happen now, you don't want something that's going to take you months to get to market. Okay? And so that's a definite consideration. Product type and delivery is another way that you can organize your ideas. So, I do a lot of teaching based on webinars. Obviously, here we are. But not all my ideas are webinar based. I have books that I'm working on. I have video ideas. I have all kinds of stuff. Some new blog ideas, all of that. And so I find that it's easy to organize some of my ideas based on type of products. Although more so, I probably use the first one, relevance to market. And then narrow your choices to one or two. And I know that this could send shockwaves of panic through some of your lives, and that's okay, because again, remember, great ideas are a dime a dozen. So pick one or two, preferably one. But, I added or two just for the sake of some of you. But you have to narrow your choices, because honestly, that's where some of your overwhelm is coming from. You don't know what to pick. So pick one. Okay? Pick one. Well, what if I pick the wrong one? That's an excuse. Just pick one. Okay? And then, after you pick it, ask yourself, why did you choose that one? I don't know. If you don't know, get rid of it and pick another one. Okay? You have to have a clear reason why. Why did you pick that idea? Well, because it seemed to make the most sense, or because, are you getting excited about it when you talk about it? That's a good reason. Okay? If you're like, well, because that's what makes sense, or, it's what people seem to be buying right now, ain't bad reason. Yes, relevance to market is important, but if your heart ain't in it, then you're going to waste your time. And then create a clear mission statement, for that idea. In other words, it's kind of like a one sentence summary. What do you hope to accomplish with this idea? Okay, I'll show you a couple of my examples. I do a lot of my own product planning and brainstorming using Evernote, just because I can access it from any device. And so these are a couple of screenshots from my Evernote account. And you'll probably notice that neither of these products exist. But they're potential products. I'm not saying that they're going to become real products. Okay? They're both good ideas. But, and I handled them differently. You can see here, Easy Book Publisher, children's books. Okay? There's actually been some request for me to create something like that. So you notice I have a purpose: to equip and prepare children's book authors for publishing their children's books. And I didn't write these today, okay? Most of these I wrote several months ago. training, 6 webinars, and then I listed some topics, potential topics. It doesn't, all subject to change. And then I also looked at expanding the whole EasyBook series. Okay, I have EasyBook Expert as a domain, and I thought, just different creation styles of books that could include different writing styles. So this is my purpose. New series would focus on creation styles for books, would also include writing styles as well. Photo books, children's books, genre books, how-to books, recipe books, etc. Potential domains, and then a couple ideas for modules. And then like these 4 modules would rotate through all the different topics. So 4 modules about choosing a topic, producing book content, lay out the book and cover, publish and promote the book. 4 photo books, 4 children's books, 4 how-to books, and so on. So those are the ideas, and that's a little bit of how I normally brainstorm my own product ideas. Okay, it's not always in Evernote. A lot of times it ends up on a notepad and then ultimately in Evernote. But I have notepads full of this stuff. Okay, now I have made a decision on what my next course is going to be, but I'm not going to tell you what that is until next week. But I think you'll like it. All right, so stage 2 of 7 is market research, and this is kind of important. So I want you to think about this again as a checklist. I should create this product, that one idea that you picked. I should create this product because, and then fill it in, fill in the blank. Why should you create it? Who cares? Okay, why should you create it? Next, the end result I want my customer to achieve is. Now, you don't have to always do all of these, okay? But just bear with me. So the end result, what do you want people to walk away with your training? Like what do you want them to achieve? What do you want them to come away with? Okay? You want to be clear in that, because if you're not clear on that, how are you going to accomplish it? Like if you don't know for sure where you're going to go, how are you going to get there? So that's why this is so important. And this is this, you could consider this part of the brainstorming part, but I have it in market research because these answers naturally segue into your market research, because the next question is, who is my ideal customer? So if you have an end result in mind that you want your customer to achieve, who's your ideal customer? How are you going to achieve a certain end result for your customer if you don't know who your customer is, right? So you want to describe them in detail. And I have an ideal customer in mind every time I create a product. I actually have a specific person in mind. And you can do that. You can call them an avatar or whatever. I never really use that word much, except for like the movie, but some people call them avatars. But basically it's your ideal customer. Who is it? And then everything that you do from a product creation, from a marketing perspective, from all of it, should be to that ideal customer. But you have to know who it is first. And then where are you going to find them? Where's your ideal customer hang out? You kind of need to know that, because if you're going to market to them and you're going to reach them, where are you going to find them? Like I'll use this current launch that we just completed as an example, and I'm not going to give up too many details just because it's not appropriate. But whenever we were planning this, which it was in the planning for a long time, believe me, we started the conversation on this PS Instant Expert a year and a half ago. But whenever we were planning the marketing part of it and doing the market research, the first thing we did was identify JV partners that we knew this would be a good fit for. And then we reached out to them to make sure that they had time set aside that they could promote. And holy cow, if it wasn't for the joint venture partners, man, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. I mean, yeah, of course we had our own list and all of that, but they were the ones that really brought the sauce to the cookout, because it was an ideal fit. We knew who our ideal customer was, and they had them. Okay, so that's how we knew that our chances of success were greatly increased, because we knew where they were and we knew how to connect with them. You also want to ask, who are my competitors and what are they offering that is the same as my product or product idea, and what's different with mine? You need to know this. When we first started, we meaning John and Jay and I, when we first started planning out PS Instant Expert, the very first serious conversation that we had about it, when we finally made a decision, okay, we're going to do this, the very first thing we did was went through our competitors. What other products are on the market right now? What do we like about them? What don't we like about them? We bought those products. We went through, not to copy them or anything like that, but we had to understand, what's our competition doing? What would cause people to respond in a positive way? What would cause people to respond in a negative way? And so we had to dissect that. We had to understand what's out there, because if they have holes in their product, well, that's a good thing. Then we need to fill in those holes. If they have stuff that makes sense for us to include too, well then, so on and so forth. And if they have fluff in there, then we need to identify that and move on. And then along with that, what is different with my product? And I can tell you, I'm not going to go into those details, but I can tell you, as a matter of fact, with the Photoshop product that I created, I can tell you every single point that's different in it compared to the competitor products that are on the market in our marketplace, in the internet marketing space. I can tell you every single one, because I have a list. And how we worked in our setup was, we had a Google Doc that all three of us, well, actually our whole team had access to, because there was more than just the three of us. But our whole team had access to, and every change went into that Google Doc. And so every single aspect of that entire product was laid out and mapped out. Every single part of it. So that we knew exactly what was the same, what was different, what needed to be created, and so on and so forth. And yeah, this was a bigger launch, but quite frankly, I do this with pretty much every product that I create. Whenever I create them, I have a basic idea of where I'm going, what's going to be in each webinar, if it's webinar based. Call it an outline, call it whatever you want. But I also know what my competitors are currently teaching on the same topic, because I've spent hours going to their websites, looking at their products, all of that kind of stuff. You have to do this part, okay? Because at the end of the day, I mean, if you don't do the market research and you don't know what's going on in the world, how could you possibly be effective? You can't. You may score a couple wins, like back into it. But, how? And one thing that I don't want to recommend, and this happens a lot in the internet marketing space, like visit Warrior Forum once. And that is where you have these folks that buy higher end products and then create knockoff products. Oh, wow, that's really cool. I think I'll make my own version. I mean, God, probably every one of my products that exist has been knocked off in some form or another, or dissected into tiny little pieces, and people teaching just one small part of it as a whole course, and then they sell it for $17. I mean, let me ask you a question. How fast do you think you're going to get to $10,000 a month at 17 bucks? Not very fast. Okay. So, don't try to do knockoffs, don't do anything like that. It's important to understand what your competitors are doing, but you want to bring to the table what makes you unique. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to find it. And, a good way to find it is to go to yourgeniusfactor.com and buy Felicia and I's course. We'll get you there, believe me. But at the end of the day, these parts of market research, and I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritties of, because I haven't read the questions yet, and there's 150 of them. And so I'm sure some of you are like, but how do I find this information out? Well, if you are interested enough in a topic or a product idea or whatever to actually move forward with it, then you should have a pretty decent idea of who your ideal customer is already, because it's likely that you are them, or that you're at least part of who your ideal customer is. But I can tell you a couple things. One is to go to Google and type in your primary keyword, do a search, and find out who the top 20 websites are, and visit every one of them. If they have a product, at least check it out or check out their sales letter. Even better, buy it, if you can afford it. But you need to find out who your competitors are. And then if it's a bigger website or whatever, go to a service like Quantcast, Quantcast. I'm sure I've talked about this in other expert media shows. But go to quantcast.com, type in their URL, and if they're all that in a bag of chips, there will be demographics that, will tell you, oh, well, 47% of the people who visit here are white women with a college degree and 2.5 kids or whatever. And, so you can learn there's tools out there that can help you discover that. But more than not, I mean, you're likely already doing a lot of stuff that's causing you to interact with people who are your ideal customer. From the people who you're interacting with on Facebook, the groups that you're in, people that you're engaging with on Twitter or Pinterest, or, social media is a boon for market research. I mean, it's just awesome. You can learn so much just by being real and talking with people and interacting with them. Okay? And so, keep that in mind. So this is where I'm going to end tonight, is on stage 2. Next week, we're going to go to stage 3 and keep going forward. And so that means, just to go back here. So next week, we're going to start off with product creation. And we're going to talk about the basics of getting going with that, some important questions and observations that you need to make, and getting real with your tools and services as well. These two are really interconnected, obviously. And then we're going to move into marketing and promotion. And I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm thinking that these 3 may be all the further that we get next week. We'll just see how it plays out, because I'm looking at my notes, because I already have all of this mapped out already. So, and I'm looking at my notes. They're sitting here right next to me, and I can see where we may not actually get through 5 next week, but we'll see. But anyways, I want to spend a little bit of time going through questions and see what we got. Yeah, Brad makes a really good point. He says it's not what you consciously believe, but what your subconscious believes, which is the driver for success or failure. The subconscious mind wins every time in a tug of war with the conscious mind. Absolutely. That's true. And Liz says, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. I like that, and that's definitely true. My grandfather used to always quote Henry Ford, who said, this is my paraphrase, but Henry Ford always said, there are those who believe that they can and those who believe they can't, and both are correct. Sandra said, I just had a client who got mad for me wanting to be paid. They asked me to work over the Memorial holiday, and I did, and yet no money. If they didn't want to pay and it was a holiday weekend, then why did you work? I mean, that would be my question. And, that actually sparked something. And I'm not saying this is your reason, but it reminded me of something that happened to me when I had my design business. Back when things were really tight, there was the temptation for me to lower my prices. because I didn't have a lot of work coming in, and I had times where, I was afraid that if I, whenever I was bidding on a cover job or whatever, if it was too high, they would go somewhere else. And I really needed the work. And that whole prospect, quite frankly, at the time just terrified me because, on the one hand, I knew the value of what I was doing, but on the other hand, I really needed the money because that meant the difference of paying the mortgage or not. And it was tough. I mean, it was tough facing that. And there was, on more than one occasion, I'll never forget, holy cow, there finally came a point where I made a stand, and a publisher asked me to bid on a job, and I did, and he balked on the price. And I said, I'm sorry, but that's what the cost is. Well, I can't afford that. I'm like, well, okay. And I let it go. And after I got off the phone with him, I won't, just out of respect, I won't share exactly what my next words were, but they weren't positive and uplifting. But I mean, I knew it, and I remember I was still married at the time, and my ex-wife said, now what are we going to do? And I said, I have no idea, but I have to believe that something will happen. Something will work out, because I stayed to my guns, and I chose me. I chose to believe in myself over being moved by need. Okay? And an interesting thing happened, and I've shared this part of the story before. I don't think I ever shared the first part. But the interesting thing that happened was, first of all, I got other work that filled in that space, which is cool. But about a month later, that same publisher called me up and said, that job that I asked you to quote on there a month or so ago? I said, yeah, what'd you ever end up doing with that? And he's like, oh, we went with another designer. And I'm like, you're calling me to tell me that, or, And he's like, no. He said, the job's on the press right now, or the job is ready. It needs to go to press today, and they can't get it to output. He said the image setter won't output the files, and the designer don't know how to fix them. He said, can you fix them? And I said, of course I can fix them. I mean, without even seeing them, I knew that I could fix it because I'm good at what I do. And I said, of course I can fix it. And he said, what's it going to cost me? And I said, it's going to cost you what I bid on the job. And he's like, but I already paid the designer. I said, that's not my fault. That's your fault. You should have went with me to begin with. Yeah, I know. I said, so do you want your job on press today or don't you? And he's like, fine, I'll pay you what you want. I said, email me the files. And he emailed me the files, and 20 minutes later, his job was on the press. And it ran without a hitch. And that's ultimately what happened with that. And it really taught me a lesson in that moment, was to not budge, because it all worked out in the end, and I didn't cheapen my my value. And I mean, that was huge for me. It was a struggle, because it was like bills aren't getting paid because I just took a stand. But yet in the end, it all worked out. And obviously I can't promise you that every single case that's going to happen for you, but I know for me it did. Judy asks a great question here. She says, how do you find the right people when you don't have the money to hire somebody to help you, and you don't live in an area with the types of people you need to associate with? Listen, I live in South Central Pennsylvania. You start talking about internet marketing or publishing or even photography or anything like that to most of the folks around here, they look at you like a dog in a new pan. Okay. So I don't want to hear it. I mean, they're out there. You got to find them. One of the best ways that I found, Judy, honestly, there's a couple options that you have. One of the methods that I used was just going to events. And I know that that costs money. I understand that. But at some point, you have to invest in your business. You have to make a positive step forward in investment. But even still, have you gone to Meetup and looked to see if there's any business related meetup groups in your area or something like that? You can join the Chamber of Commerce, which is made up of business people, Christian business fellowships, and I don't even know if they still meet. I don't know, but there's a lot of options, and if nothing else, at the very least, read books. That's actually how I got started, was reading books. I found some folks that I started off actually. The person, some of you may object to this, I don't really care. But the person that actually got me on the path, heading the right direction, was actually Joe Vitale. And I just happened to stumble into his website. I can't even tell you how I found his website. It was a random Google search. And what he said resonated with me. And he actually started me on the path in the right direction. Not him personally, just listening to teleseminars and buying his books. And, he had what the book that became The Attractor Factor was called something else before it was even released as The Attractor Factor. And I remember reading that book. And then through Joe, I got to know Jim Edwards, and those two guys were my foundation. And then shortly after that, I met David Hancock from Morgan James Publishing, and he introduced me to a lot of the internet marketing superstars of the day. And so those three guys are responsible for my success, for the foundation of my success. And there's others like Pat O'Brien and some others who believed in me when I was just getting started. But, I reached out to them. I reached out to Jim Edwards for 2 years before he would even talk to me, pretty much. But it just takes tenacity. I mean, how bad do you want it? That's really my question. Stu shared an interesting quote. It says, "Lose your mind and come to your senses" by Fritz Perls. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Liz said you got to do whatever it takes to get her done. I mean, that's really it. And I'll go back to, the question, how bad do you want it? I remember a conversation, I think I've shared this with you before, but I share stuff as it comes to me. So, that's just how it works. That's what you get from me. But I had this conversation years ago with my sister, and it kind of demonstrates all of this a little bit. And I know I shared this story before, but this is when my dad was still living, and I had breakfast with him, and we went out to this place that he loved, and we were talking about all kinds of stuff, the good old days and the town that I grew up in and all of that. And I was telling him about business and all. And the next day, I think, I ran into my sister at Target. And she said, "Hey, I need to ask you something." And I said, "Okay." She's like, "I was talking to Dad, and he said something that really shocked me, that he said that you told him." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Dad said that you told him at breakfast yesterday that you wanted to make $1 million in your business." And I said, "Dad said that?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "That's not what I said at all." And she got, "I thought that he misunderstood what you said, because I just can't imagine why you would even say that." And I said, "Yeah, he totally misunderstood, because what I actually said was that I wanted to make $10 million in my business. And you should have seen the look in her face. I wish I had a photograph because it was priceless. She's like, what? Why do you need that much money? And I said, because it gives me the ability to do stuff that I can't do without it. And she's like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And I said, what's your big dream? And she told me, and I knew what it was. It was a rhetorical question. And I said, and why aren't you doing it? And she said, because I don't have the money. And I said, so if your big brother just happened to have $10 million sitting in the bank or something, don't you think it'd be a little bit easier for you to do your thing? And she's like, well, yeah, I can see that. But $10 million? I mean, really? And I'm like, yeah, really. And actually, that number has increased quite a bit since then. I mean, now I'm just happy to get to 10 million a year. But back then, I mean, that's where my dreaming was. But it just kind of illustrates, how people think differently about stuff. And you do whatever it takes, I'm not going to get to $1 million a year or $10 million a year. I mean, I made $1 million over 2 years, but I haven't done it in a year yet. But my mindset is expanding to embrace that, and being surrounded by people who are doing 10 times that kind of helps. So, it really comes down to how bad do you want it? What's your reason why? I have grandbabies to send through college, and all of that fun stuff. And Stu says something that's really cool here that's true for each of us. He says, Tony, of course you're somebody special, so special that God realized his creation would be incomplete if you were not born. And that's true for every one of us. And man, so many of you are reading, are sharing some great tips. I can't possibly share them all. It's just awesome. But Jillian mentions a book that I can highly recommend. It's a great book. She says, reading a great book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And I can second that. It's an awesome book. That book's a good mind shifter. Let's see. Deborah brings up an interesting point. She says, I don't have a fear of failure. I have a fear of success. If what I do is successful, people will expect me to do it again. I enjoy doing so many things. I don't want to be trapped at one thing. Well, and I can completely relate to that because I was there. I mean, I lived that dream. It wasn't very fulfilling, but like when I walked away from my design business and I started moving into internet marketing, of course, I focused primarily on the public domain, and I still love it. I have a lot of new things in store for public domain, but it's not the next thing. But anyway, but I didn't know how photography fit into that. I didn't know how the design stuff even fit into that. I didn't know how all of that fit. And all of it interested me. But, I mean, look at me now. Look at what I'm teaching on now. I mean, I'm teaching people how to use Photoshop. I'm teaching people how to take better pictures. I'm teaching people how to design books. All the stuff that I love to do. I love to do it all. And so I don't think I would be happy just focusing on photography or just focusing on the public domain or one of those. So, I mean, it is possible to have your cake and eat it too, because that's my experience, and there's some new things that I'm working on putting into place that's going to add to that even more. So it is possible, but the point is you have to start somewhere. So it's okay to have success in one area. There's apparently you can fail at stuff. That's not been my experience so much lately, but Lord knows I've failed epically at times in the past. But, if you brainstorm correctly and you do your market research, you can radically increase your chances of success. The real secret there, and I didn't share this earlier, but the real secret there is to not set yourself up for failure by creating false finish lines. And we often do that. Major companies do that. It's like Toyota took a loss in the first quarter, but the loss isn't based on their profit margin. They actually turn a profit, but their loss is based on projections that they wanted to hit and they didn't meet those. So the company, they portray the company as having a losing first quarter when they actually turned a profit, but they didn't meet their expected goals. That's crazy BS. That's like wacky thinking. So don't set these crazy false finish lines, up and it's like, oh, I want to make $100,000 on my product launch, and then you make 50. It's like, man, I thought this one would be a success. You made $50,000. I mean, hell, if you make $50, it's a success. If you make $0, it's a success. It's a success because you created something. It'll sell eventually. So it's all in how you look at it. Sandra says, difficult to hear, but so true. I've been in crisis mode for so long. I feel like I like the beating the odds feeling. My life is hard, but look at how I overcome the odds. Being successful would not be as interesting. That's a really great observation of your situation, because that's exactly, I didn't have words to describe it that way, but that's exactly where I was. That we get locked into these cycles where, like me being Superman and saving the day every single month in my business 6-7 years ago, I liked feeling like Superman. Now I just have the poster, but back then I liked feeling needed. I liked feeling like I saved the day, so because I liked that feeling, of course I had to create scenarios so that I could save the day again. But that's a vicious cycle. I mean, honestly, that's messed up. But I did that for years. And it wasn't until I realized, what? I'm awesome without having to save the day. And I don't mean that in a, ego sense. I'm just saying that my validation doesn't come from me saving the day. My validation comes from the fact that I exist. And that's really what it comes down to for all of us. If you constantly have drama in your life, you can say, I hate drama, all that you want. But if you allow it in your life on an ongoing basis, you're getting something from it. And you can argue with me all you want, but you are. If you're allowing it to remain in your life and you're getting caught up in it, you're getting something from it. And you need to figure out what you're getting. And the same is true for all of it. For all of the crazy excuses that we come up with. Cynthia says, like a bird in a cage with the door open, the bird doesn't realize he can fly out, or the elephant trained to a chain doesn't leave when the chain is removed. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I've shared in the past how, one of my favorite stories is the allegory of the caves by Plato. And it's the exact same thing. They went through multiple generations of being prisoners in a cave. Their captors were gone long ago, and they were afraid to leave because they believed that they were still captives when actually they were free. And that's the truth with all of us. Success is already there. Ultimately, it's you recognizing the fact that it's yours, and you giving yourself permission to have it. Marcy says, I have several almost finished projects and I have no idea what my problem is in this chasm between where they are now and the finished product. Well, let me ask you a question. And there's probably a lot of you that can relate to this. That's why I read this one. Let me ask you a question. What are you getting out of not finishing those products? Because obviously you're getting something out of it, or you would have finished them. So what are you getting out of not having them finished? You know, I'll let you in a little secret. I have a book that I've been working on and working on and working on. I have commitments to an accountability partner. I have all the skills, all the content, everything is done and ready to go. And yet that book is not getting done. And I have to ask myself, why? What is the real hang up? What am I afraid of? What is my real reason for not getting this book done? Is it laziness? Is it busyness? Is it time? Is it any of those excuses that we listed earlier? What am I getting out of it by not finishing the book? You know, so I mean, I do this too. I'm not exempt. But you have to ask those hard questions, because if you don't, you're not going to get the answer that you need that will bring the freedom and the breakthrough that you need to actually get the stuff done. Because, you know, you could power through, Marcy, and get this stuff done. Say, you know what? Tony's right. I'm just going to power through and get it done. I'm not going to let this stuff hold me hostage anymore, and power through and get it done. And then it'll still sit there and not do anything. I'm not saying that that's what will happen, but, you know, ultimately it's understanding the core reason why. I mean, that's really it right there. If you don't take anything else away from tonight's teaching or whatever it is, it's that. You don't need to understand why in every single case, but holy cow, it'll get you down the road a long way if you understand what you're trying to avoid. Carol says, you're so right. I've been feeling the walls and making all the excuses, and I know better. I've been successful before 14 years ago. I needed this talk, and I sure need to hear it again. I hope you have a replay. There will be a replay. Sharon has a tech question, which I'll be happy to answer. I have 4 USB ports, Sharon, on my iMac. And usually one of those is occupied by a USB extender, a powered extender, so that I can plug even more devices in. Usually, Tom, I'll buy the URLs as soon as they come to mind, which is why I have hundreds of them. I have well over 300. I need to clean them out. Some of them I'm not ever going to use them. Todd says, regarding your JV launch, is this doable for somebody that doesn't have your network? What suggestions do you have for somebody who isn't as advanced as you guys are? We don't have a network like you, Jay, John, James, and Daniel. Stick tight. Over the next couple weeks, I'm actually going to address those points. Okay, that's going to be part of the process that we're going through. I mean, I'm not going to share all of our details, but you make a really valid point there, because I mean, with this launch, we had the 3 of us, John, Jay, and I. We had a dozen active affiliates promoting and another 30 passively promoting. We had another team of 3 or 4 people working behind the scenes to do everything from building websites to transcribing to doing customer support and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's a big old moving machine. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. But I'm going to be breaking a lot of that down whenever we get into like product delivery and follow up and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be talking about some of that for sure. Schuler shared another book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. Awesome. I'll have to check that one out. I don't think I read that one. Although it sounds really familiar, but I don't think I read it. Yvonne says, thanks, Tony. This has been inspirational, motivational. You're welcome. And Clay says, awesome tonight. Thank you. Congratulations. And Deborah says, awesome webinar, Tony. Super kick-ass. Kudos. Thank you. Sharon, I'll have the replay. Sharon asked about the earlier slides. I'll have the replay up tomorrow. Kathy says, to the person who didn't get paid, I started requiring a coaching client pay for the session before our coaching session. That made all the difference. Sorted out the non-payers from the good clients. Yeah, I mean, that's really important. I mean, I shared on Facebook earlier today. I knew that it would get a response, and that's one of the reasons why I shared it. Obviously, the survey that many of you participated in, one of the feedbacks that I got on how I could improve my training, somebody had posted about, offer more free stuff. And, I made the comment, I guess 100 hours of free training isn't enough because that's how much is in Expert Media Show now. It's over 100 hours. And a lot of people really responded to that post. But like at the end of the day, what's so funny, and I saw this play out even with our product launch that we had, because you get customer support. Believe me, you get a lot of customer support. Is how limiting and failure oriented so many people can be. Limited thinking, failure mindsets. All of that, just focusing on like the old saying goes, I'm searching for words to be kind. Like the old saying goes, making mountains out of molehills. I don't know if you ever heard that phrase. I did as a kid growing up, but it's like making a big deal out of stuff that isn't a big deal, or overthinking things and making stuff harder than it is, and looking for excuses. And, I mean, you talk to some people and, you would think that none of us should ever charge for anything that we offer. Like it doesn't have value, that they should get everything for free. But I've proven it over and over and over, and everyone else that I know has done the same thing. And that is that in most cases, people who get stuff for free will not take action on it. I mean, quite frankly, people who pay a couple grand for stuff won't take action on it, much less if they didn't pay anything for it. If it don't cost you something, what's your motivation? And the same has been true for me, But yet, go try to get a franchise, pick a store and try to get a franchise, and see what that's going to cost you to start that business. But yet, I mean, we were having people balk over, $10 a month for Photoshop. The cost of the front end product was too much. The upsell was too much, whatever the case may be. I mean, for crying out loud, we gave you multiple business models that you could profit from. We gave you training on how to profit from those business models, training on how to use Photoshop, gave you the rights to sell the damn course, the sales letter and everything. I mean, for crying out loud, you know, it's like you have to almost sabotage it to fail, you know, with this whole thing. But yet it's like, you weren't upfront with us, or you're doing this or that. It's just crazy how some people think. But ultimately what I realized, and I realized this way before this, you know, current launch, and this is a good tip for all of you. Recognize and realize, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Identify who your customer is and recognize who they are. And what I realized a long time ago is people who always want stuff for free and they gripe and complain about everything, they're not my customer. I mean, they may try to buy my stuff, and maybe they actually will buy my stuff, but at the end of the day, that isn't who I'm creating my products for. I'm creating them for you guys. You know, I look over the list. I know who's here. You know, I know which ones of you are showing up every week and who's buying my stuff. I track all of that. I recognize your names. And you're the ones that I create my products for. You know? So, you know, the people who buy in and refund a week later, you know, I know who those people are. I know why they refunded. So, you know, I do pay attention. And they aren't my customers. They may buy my stuff, but they're not my customers. I know who my customer is, and you need to as well. Because when you realize that, who your people are, selling gets fun. And that's another thing that I'll just say in closing, because holy cow, you can tell like the voice is over now, right? Because I'm not like rushing out to watch television. Now it's like, so you think you can dance, but that's on Wednesdays. But anyway, whenever you recognize who your customer is and you're not afraid to sell to them, I'm amazed at how many people have an issue of selling. It's like, oh, I could never sell, you know, but we do it all the time. And I find it hilarious, you know. I especially know people locally, you know, how can you sell to people? That just seems deceptive or whatever. And then you're talking to them on the phone the next day and it's like, oh my God, I just went to this new restaurant that opened up, you know, the one that just opened up on such and such a street, and the food was awesome. You know, like, what are they doing? They're selling. We all sell. We're selling ourselves, if nothing else. You know, so we all sell all the time, except that you're a salesperson. You're creative, you're a salesperson, you're a built-in marketer, you know, you're designed for success. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can walk in that. So if you have any issues about selling, you kind of need to get over that, like now, because how are you going to make money if you don't sell? And the truth is that you already are selling. You know, if nothing else, you're selling the fact that you're not a salesperson. Now, how warped is that? No, really, I'm not a salesperson, Tony. You know, you're making fun of me, but I'm really not. I'm not a salesperson. Oh, really? You're just trying to convince me that I need to buy what you're dishing. So anyway, there's a lot more comments. Holy cow, I really appreciate the feedback tonight. But I think it's time to call it a day. And so thank you so much for all your feedback, all your training. And next week we're going to pick up where we left off. And we'll see how far we get into it. And, you know, if we need to go a third week in a row here, then we will. All right. So I hope you all have a great rest of the week. And I'll see you, if not before, next Tuesday at 7 p.m.